Hi, and welcome to Run Tall with Tim. I'm Tim. I'm glad you're here and we could spend a little time together. On today's episode, I'm comparing two Max Cushion daily trainers, both new for 2021. It's the New Balance Fresh Foam More V3 and the Saucony Triumph 19.
Shame on me, thinking it was just a phase. Got me like, ooh, got me like, ooh. Ain't it fun recognizing your mistakes? Got me like, ooh, feelings like, ooh. Now I brought my own.
Now both of these are awesome Max Cushion daily trainers that'll give you a lot of really comfortable miles, but the run experience is very different. So how do you know which one to buy? Well, stay tuned because that's the question that we're going to try to answer today. But before I get into it too far, I always like to demonstrate what it looks like to run in the shoes I'm about to review for you. So let's do that. But then when we come back together, I'm going to take a real close look at the New Balance Fresh Foam More V3 and the Saucony Triumph 19 to try to answer that question, which shoe is right for you.
When you're down and you stare out your window, hoping that you'll come up with some words to say. That's not okay. When you feel like you're fed up with heartbreak, and you know that you can't take another day. Well, that's not okay. We can never go back this road. You never go back that way. I see you standing in the corner like it's okay. Don't you know that you move with your body? Don't you know that you move with your body? We can never go back this road. You never go back that way. I see you standing in the corner like it's okay. Don't you know that you move with your body? Don't you know that you move with your body? When you're moving your feet on the dance floor, and you don't care a thing about a word they say. That's how we play. That's how we play. I am here with my friends and we're dancing. We can feel all the obstacles go away. That's how we play. We can never go back this road. You never go back that way. I see you standing in the corner like it's okay. Don't you know that you move with your body? Don't you know that you move with your body?
Now both of these are considered to be neutral road shoes. I did order each of them true to size and the fit was perfect for me on each of them. Now the Fresh Foam More V3, that is the more expensive of the two shoes, and they retail for $165 US, while the Saucony Triumph 19 goes for $150 US. Now the lighter of the two shoes, and a surprise to me, was the New Balance Fresh Foam More V3, because these just look like they're a much heavier shoe than they are. They came in at 10.2 ounces or 290 grams, and that's for a men's size 9 on my scales, while the Triumph 19, they came in at 10.5 ounces or 298 grams. If you're new to the channel, thanks for tuning in and welcome to the Run Tall family. Now I post shoe reviews, comparisons, and shoe battles weekly, but I also like to post other videos related to running as well. So if you enjoy watching running shoe reviews and other videos about running, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. Now this video is not intended to be a full review of either shoe, but if you want to check that out, I'll put a link in the description below to reviews that I completed for each one previously. Starting with the New Balance Fresh Foam More V3 first, we're going to look at the upper, and here we can see that they have lots of room up here in the toe box to be able to splay your toes. So I think for people that might have wider feet, this could be a really good option for you. You can see it has plenty of perforations up there as well to give it some airflow. But I did find that these do run much warmer on foot than the Saucony Triumph 19 does. And then as we look at the side of the shoe and work our way back around to the heel counter, we can see that they do have some plastic overlays here in the midsection, including their New Balance logo. But then all of this shiny material, that's rubberized material as well. And I think gives it a little bit of structure to the upper as well as some durability. And they do have quite a bit of it here, both on the lateral side as well as on the medial side of the shoe. And they seem to have a little bit more of it actually on the medial side, because it goes all the way up around to the heel collar, all the way back around to the heel counter of the shoe. Now the More V3, now that does have an engineered mesh material that they made the upper out of. It does feel a little bit more cloth or soft to the touch than it does with the Saucony Triumph 19. With this material on the upper, it's a more plastic type feeling to it. I did find it to be a little bit more water resistant. I often run in the morning. There's a lot of dew that's out there on the plants and things as I go through my trails that I like to run on. So I did find that these were a little more water resistant, so my feet didn't get quite as wet or soaked by the end of the run as they did in the More V3s. Then we can see that it is more narrow up here in the toe box, and I would say that holds true for the entire shoe. It is a more form-fitting feeling, especially across the midfoot section, so I do feel like I'm a little more locked in or secure in the Saucony Triumph 19 than I do in the Fresh Foam More V3. And then, of course, they do have their plastic logo for Saucony there in the midfoot section of the shoe. And then in the heel counter, they also have some additional structure back here as well that gives it a little bit more stability back in the heel. Now both of the uppers are really comfortable to run in, but again, for a form fit, I think the Triumph 19 has it over the New Balance Fresh Foam More V3. Looking at the eyelet chain on each of these, you can see it's a pretty standard eyelet chain for the most part. The More V3 does have these loops that are kind of in the center that bring the laces over or across your midfoot just a little bit further. But you know, Saucony Triumph 19 on that shoe, they did something similar. They don't have loops, but the way that they cut the eyelet chain or designed it, you can see that it does kind of jet in just a little bit there across the midfoot section of the shoe. So while it's a different approach, I think it's very similar in what they were trying to accomplish and giving you a more form fit across the midfoot section of each of these. I did feel locked in and secure in both of them, just a little more so in the Triumph 19 than I did in the More V3. And both of the eyelet chains on the More V3 as well as the Saucony Triumph 19 do have that extra eyelet in case you want to run with the runner's knot. Now, I don't always do that, but it's sure nice to have that option should I wish to. Turning and looking at the tongue on each of these, they're both well padded. There's plenty there to help keep you comfortable when you're out running. One of the biggest differences on the More V3, it's not gusseted, although they do have this loop that you can run your laces through to help keep it in place. I didn't have any issues with it migrating around. You can see it has these big, nice, wide wings up at the top, so it lays nice and flat across your foot. Again, no issues there at all in either shoe. They both feel really comfortable. I didn't feel the laces cutting across my foot on either one of them. Here you can see they've got perforations really from the start of the tongue up to, well, I'd say about halfway up, and then it gets a more solid material up at the top. So this does run a little bit warmer, I think, than it does on the Triumph 19. Now here, again, lots of padding, plenty there to help keep you comfortable when you're out running. And here they have a gusset on each side, so although they don't have that loop to run your laces through, you don't need it because it's not going anywhere. And that gusseted tongue does feel a little bit more form-fitting, as I mentioned when I was talking about the upper itself. The padding around the heel collar and the tab, there's plenty of it in both shoes. And I would say, you know, it's about the same. I don't know that there's a big difference in the amount of padding. Both are really comfortable to run in. I didn't have any issues with it that way. Plenty back in the heel counter area or the heel tab for your Achilles to rest in. I found it to be really comfortable. One of the biggest differences is on the More V3. Here you can see that they do feature a slight Achilles heel flare, which is really popular in shoe designs today. I found it to be really comfortable, and you can use that Achilles heel flare to help get your shoes on. And then as we take a look at the Triumph 19, again, about the same amount of padding around the heel collar as well as in the tab. Plenty back in the heel counter or heel tab area for your Achilles to rest in. I found it to be really comfortable. Again, no Achilles heel flare, so this is a much more traditional design to it. And there's no pull tab to help you get your shoes on with the Triumph 19. Checking out the heel counter on each of these, starting with the More V3 first. put it up on my shoulder and give it the pinch test. Here you can see that they do have some structure there. I can pinch it together, but there's a lot of resistance. Now that just helps to stabilize your heel and to create a nice solid heel pocket for you to set in. One of the biggest differences, however, is just the design and how far that they bring that Fresh Foam X midsole foam up around your heel. So you can see it really wraps you. So you feel like you're kind of sitting in the bucket seat of a racing car. That does define that heel pocket really well. So I've always felt nice and secure from a pronation standpoint in the heel counter of the More V3. And then as we check out the Saucony Triumph 19, here you can see that they have a bit more structure here. So this is a little bit more solid material around the heel counter area. Still stabilizes your heel. So I didn't have any slippage with either shoe. Felt really comfortable that way. I don't think that the heel pocket is quite as well defined as it is in the More V3, but still a very stable feeling to run in. Between the two, I prefer the More V3, the feel of the heel in that shoe, just because I like that sitting in the bucket seat of a racing car feel when I'm out running. So let's check out the midsole. And here I'm going to start with the More V3 first and their Fresh Foam X midsole foam. There's just a ton of it. They have 38 millimeter stack height in the heel and 34 millimeters up in the forefoot. So they have a 4 millimeter offset. And you can see that it has a fairly aggressive curve or rocker to the design of the midsole foam, with a fairly aggressive heel bevel here and a nice curvature up in the forefoot. Now that just helps you to move through your gait cycle nice and smoothly as you transition, from the striking the ground through to your toe off. Now I find that Fresh Foam X midsole foam, there's so much of it, it is super soft. It's by far the softest of the two shoes. But I do find sometimes it feels a bit like there's a wobble to them. Not from a pronation standpoint, just overall, it just feels a little bit wobbly at times to run in. So it took a little bit of getting used to, but I love to run in them. They're by far, like I said, the softest of the two Max Cushion daily trainers here. And then as we take a look at the Triumph 19, here you can see that they have 32.5 millimeters of their Power Run Plus midsole foam in the heel and 24.5 millimeters up in the forefoot. So they have an 8 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. This is a more dense foam to run in. Still lots of bounce to it, just not a soft bounce. Highly cushioned. You're not going to feel the road on contact underneath you. And it's a more of a classic running shoe design to the way that they've sculptured that midsole foam. So you can see it's a little bit flatter here in the midfoot section of the shoe and a less of a curve up in the forefoot, but you still get a bounce, and I still feel like I'm getting some help as I move through my gait cycle. So let's flip these shoes over and we'll take a look at the outsole and see how they're protecting all of that soft midsole foam. I'm starting with the More V3 first. And I think one of the things that you notice right away is just how wide a landing platform that you have there. You can see just how wide it is up in the forefoot of the shoe, but then it maintains that width through the midfoot section as well as into the heel. Now I think that's really important with the More V3 because that Fresh Foam X midsole foam, there's so much of it and it's so soft. As I mentioned, sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of a wobble to it. So having this larger landing platform does help to mitigate some of that wobble and just makes it feel a little more stable. So I do appreciate that. And the other thing here is that in the midfoot section of the shoe, because it stays wide here, you don't get that form fit feeling like you do in a Triumph 19 because that upper just seems to drape over your foot rather than wraps it and gives you a more form-fit feeling in the Triumph 19. And here you can see that they still have lots of blown rubber protecting all of that Fresh Foam X midsole foam here. So I don't think that durability is going to be an issue with the More V3, nor do I think it's an issue with the Saucony Triumph 19. Now here for their outsole rubber, they have what they call their XT900. It's a carbon rubber, so it's going to give you lots of durable miles and protect all of that Power Run Plus midsole foam. But as I mentioned, when you flip these over, it's noticeable just how much more narrow of a landing platform you have up in the forefoot. But then look, see how much more narrow it is in the midfoot section as well. And it stays pretty narrow there in the heel. But because it gets narrow in this hourglass design here, you have this customized fit or this form fit feeling with the upper because it really kind of wraps your foot more like a burrito does than it does in the More V3. So overall, the New Balance Fresh Foam More V3 is the more expensive of the two options, but they are by far the softest to run in. So if you're looking for a recovery day shoe, I think they're the better choice between these two. Also, they're a bit wider up in the toe box as well as across the midfoot section of the shoe. So if you have wider feet, these are definitely going to feel a little bit more comfortable to you. Now with the Triumph 19, they are the less expensive of the two options, and they're a little bit more form-fitting, so a little bit more narrow up in the toe box. You do get a more lockdown feeling across the midfoot section of the shoe. The foam to run in is a little bit more dense, but they're still a max cushion shoe. So while they're not as soft as the More V3s, they still make a great choice as a daily trainer simply to log a lot of comfortable miles. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
When you're down and you stare out your window